I said that I would record a video showing some of the things I do when I'm doing layout and InDesign. I'm going to be using Christian's text from his Deadfellas scenario. I won't be trying to reproduce the document exactly as I had it. If I'd thought at the time, I could have recorded it while I was doing it, but it was a kind of afterthought. So I'll just cover some of the things I think about while I'm working, and I'll maybe show you how to achieve very, very similar results in Affinity Publisher as well. There's a few things Affinity Publisher can't do, but it's pretty good. I'll start with an A4 document. I've got my units set to points. I find that quite useful when you're working with type. I know type is always shown in points, but for things like indents and space between paragraphs or stuff like that, it can be really handy. I'll go for 2 columns. Turn on the preview while I see what I'm doing. I'll go for 2 columns with a 14 point gutter in between. I'll check primary text frame, make sure the orientation's right. I shall uncheck that to break the link, and what I would go for now, normally I would start with something and then change it later. It's a wee bit of trial and error. Now, I don't use symmetrical left and right. I've got that completely wrong. So I prefer to design for print, and in print I like to have a bit more space on the outside margin of the page. It's where readers would naturally pop their thumb when they're thumbing through a print book. And obviously you need a bit more space at the bottom if you're going to stick things like page numbers and stuff. Now, I'm going to be using a baseline grid, so either this number or this number will have to change. The reason for that is you want, if I'm using 12 point baseline grid, you want to have an even you want this to be a multiple of 12 points. So I mean, what you could do, you could do it through trial and error, or you could just say 595.276. Subtract your top, subtract your bottom, you're left with that. So that is the space and point, the dimensions and points between there and there. If I divide that by 12, I find 36. So we want a round number, so 36 times 12 is 432. So if we go back to 595.276, 163.276. If we leave the bottom as it is, copy that, paste that in there. That should work. And just to test that, I'm going to turn on my baseline grid straight away. So it's preferences on a PC anyway. Grids, baseline grid. We want 12 point, and we want it starting at the top margin. So here, not here. We want that to be 0. Okay, that. And to see the baseline grid, we'll go here. And I've fucked it up already. Right, so you can see for some reason my calculation was obviously wrong. So to fix that, so we could add that to the bottom margin. Right, so that's what we want. So we'll just close that. Control D to place the text. Skip that, don't care. Right, that's the raw text from the Word document brought in, and obviously it's pulled in all sorts of paragraph and character styles from the Word document. I'm not interested in any of them. You know, if I'm unsure later what's meant to be a heading 1, a heading 2 or whatever, I can refer back to the original Word document. I would rather just bin all of these. I don't like modifying them. I would rather create my own from scratch. So delete all of these. Now you can see not a lot's changed. It's because we've got all sorts of overrides. So I would just select all, hold down Alt, click there, boom. So everything now is back to the basic paragraph style. That's a sort of built-in one, and that's just based on whatever you have set up. It's a terrible idea to ever use that as well. What overrides are on it now? Clear that, right. So the first thing I would do is tidy up the text. Turn on show hidden characters. So straight away, the obvious things are these double returns to create space. That's a big no-no. A space at the start of a paragraph is a no-no. Space at the end before the paragraph mark is a no-no. You know, the spell mistakes. The stuff that I would find as I work through it. And I know from working on this that there is other things, you know, there's another space there. Now you can sit and do it all manually, or you can use find replace. But there's also there's a useful script. It's in, if you open up your scripts, go into application, sample, JavaScript, and you'll find one called find change by list. If I show that, if I open that up, notepad, yep. If you have a look at the script, you know, it's quite well commented, tells you exactly what it's going to do. It's based on this, I think. Yeah, so it searches for a lot of, it tells you here, you know, find all returns followed by a space, replaced with a single return, find all returns preceded by a space, remove the space, find all double tabs, double returns, find all them, stick in end dashes instead of dashes. So it's quite useful. So basically, if I just run that, it gets rid of a lot of the things that you would normally have to do sort of semi-manually. If you were doing it within find replace, you actually find there's quite a lot of custom queries built in. These are useful, you know, and what that script has done is basically it's done that, it's done that, it's done that. I don't know if it's done that. Let's give it a try. Oh, it missed one of them. Now I know from working on this before that the way that ellipsis has been done is dot space dot space dot. I want to change that to dot dot dot. And if you're using a suitable font, those 3 points will be replaced by a single special ellipsis character anyway, but it's a lot better than that. So it's found 3 of them. Right, that'll work for the moment. There's things like, you know, that needs a space. Needs a space. Right, but at this point, after doing that, I would be happy to start setting up the basic styles. So, new paragraph style, based on no paragraph style, and I just call it body. I'm happy with Minion Pro. I'm going to make it 10 point. It's going to be 10 on 12, but I'll specify 12 rather than it being in parenthesis, which would indicate an auto value. I don't want an auto value. That's largely going to be overridden by the baseline grid. You know, it's going to be 12, but it's going to be according to the grid rather than this. That all looks fine. That's all fine. We'll go for a first line indent of, say, 12. Could do 10. It's a good idea to be around, you know, if you're using 10 point type, you could use a 10 point indent, first line indent. 12 works as well though, and might work better with the vertical spacing. Don't remember with that. Hyphenation on. I would change these a wee bit. I don't want too many hyphens. I don't want to hyphenate capitalised words and stuff. Justification. Now these settings, I got a lot of these from Nigel French's InDesign typography book, which is brilliant. You'll find these options in Affinity Publisher as well, the first two sets. So you can set Affinity Publisher up the exact same way for justification, apart from it doesn't allow automatic glyph scaling. Now purists would throw their hands up in horror at somebody using glyph scaling, but allowing InDesign to vary the width of individual characters by, 2% for better justification, it just works. It works better. It's worth using. That's fine. Now none of that justification stuff kicks in until you turn on full justification. So since I made that last change outside of the new paragraph style dialogue, it's an override to the style I was creating. So it's sometimes easier to close the dialogue, make changes up here using these controls, or stuff that pops out here, and then just when you're happy with it, just right click and do redefine style. So that's fine. I could apply that to everything while I'm here. Then what I would do is create a variant of that. Call it body first. Because typically the first paragraph in each section won't have a first line indent, doesn't need it. First line indents just how you show paragraph separation. Doesn't make any sense for the first paragraph to be indented. So we'll whip it out for that. But everything else remains the exact same. And it's also based on body. So it means if I make a change to body later on, it'll update body first as well. If I change the font, change the colour of the font, anything else like that. So actually applying that to first paragraphs, you can just do it, because typically I would have to work through the whole document looking at stuff anyway, so it's not a big deal for me to apply it manually. You can set it up so that, you know, if you have a heading style, you can tell it the next paragraph what style to use. So, you know, if that was heading 1, you'd then say next style would be body first. And in the body first style, you can say the next style is body. But I find it easier just to do it manually as I'm working through the whole document, because you have to work through the whole document anyway. Right, on to character styles now. Character styles override the style of the paragraph for specific words or sequences of words. So we need one for italics, and the only change we're saying use exactly what is set up in the paragraph style, but the one thing that's to be different is that we want it italic. And again, because of the way this is set up, if I was to change the font for body, that will still change. It will be italic. Very rarely you might find there's a font which doesn't have an italic, in which case it will highlight that there's something missing. The other thing I like to do is replace hyphen type dashes with an end dash. Change it all. Now there might be cases where we do want a short kind of wee hyphen, but I would deal with them individually later. What else do we need? We need so some open type fonts have got a style, a case style of open type all small caps, and I like that for these kind of things, and it differs from using the small caps option here. If a font doesn't have open type all small caps, what it does is it takes a normal capital letter, shrinks it down to be the same, that's called the X height, to be the same height as the lowercase letters, but because it's getting shrank down, it affects the kind of weight of it. You know, it'll be noticeably thinner than the type it's next to. But I do like using open type all small caps for things in caps like that. So these are just sort of style choices that you can make. I think italicizing the name of the game, I think that might be a Chaosium style guide thing. I'm not 100% sure, but I've chosen to do it also to the name of the scenario. And what I could do is do a Control F again. I could search for Deadfellas. I don't want to change it to anything, but I want to change the format to a character style of italics. So there was 5 instances in the whole document. I could do the same for Call of Cthulhu. So there was another one somewhere lurking. Now there is ways of, because having to hunt for these manually would be a pain. So let me see if I had it set up. Now there's a grep command, and I think I stored it. Yeah, words starting with multiple caps I've stored. Yeah, so it's looking for any character A to Z, A to Z, 3 or more, and it's selecting the whole word, even if it had a lowercase letter on the end. Now, I think I'm going to change that to 2, and what I want it to change to again is just a format, and it's all small caps. Now I'm not going to do change all. I want to step through and see what it finds. So I can ignore that. Change. See, if I'd left it with the preset that I had built, it would have found FBI, but it wouldn't have found NY for New York. Oops, I just clicked change all, never mind. Right, so that'll have changed. Yeah, it's changed these. Doesn't matter. These will be coming out. You know, these are just markers to tell you that that's a box. So that's really handy. With grep, there's a great book by. Let me see if I can see it on my bookshelf. It's by Peter Carrel, K-A-H-R-E-L. It's called Grep in InDesign. It's quite a wee short book, but it's full of brilliant things that you can do with grep. So that's my 2 book recommendations: InDesign and grep, and InDesign Typography by Nigel French. Right. Now, notice that none of these are lining up onto my baseline grid. That's because I haven't told it to. So I would do it in the body, knowing that it'll filter into body first as well. So it's a spacing, and we're saying align to grid, all lines. Boom, there we go. And if you're working with multiple columns of type, and you're using full justification like this, or full with left aligned last line, but it does make a big difference, you know, to the look of the finished piece. One other paragraph style I'm going to set up now. And it's going to be called ordinal suffix. And with this, the only thing we want is open type superior stroke superscript. Now what I would use that for is things like that. Boom. Now again, this is a feature that only is only included with some OpenType fonts. If you don't have that feature in an OpenType font, you would just have to rely on, if I edit that, you might not have that feature, in which case you would just be using superscript. So the superscript, all it's done is shrank down a normal set of characters, so that's where you get it really thin looking compared to the rest, whereas the OpenType versions, they just work a lot better. They're specifically created for that purpose. Now, what we could do is do another find replace, another grep one, and I've got a command there ready. It's basically, it's looking for any number of digits followed immediately by ST or ND or RD or TH. So it's looking for ordinal suffixes, which is what you call, these things after a number. And we would be wanting to change it to ordinal suffix. And again, I'm going to try and remember not to hit change all, because I do want to double check this works. Right, so find next, cannot find a match. Right. Sorry about that. The document I was cutting and pasting this from had malfunctioned on me. So yeah, it's looking for any digit followed by ST, ND, RD or TH. So that'll find first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. So when I did find next, it found that one, which is already using that character style, so it doesn't really matter. Find next. No. Find next. Right. Find next. So it's found another one there. Change. Find next. Change. Find next. Change. So there wasn't too many, but it's a handy thing. It's a handy thing to have. Now what I could do, since I've cut and pasted that from I've got a Word document, I've got a Notepad document that's full of all these kind of weird grep commands that I had faffed about with before. What I really should be doing is storing these as custom ones, like I did with for finding multiple capital letter words. So save query, and I'll just call it ordinal suffix. So that will live up here there now, along with the other built-in ones and my custom ones. I'm going to sit one day and add them all in, because they're really handy. You can do some amazing things with grep. That's great. Right, so once I have the text at that sort of stage, it's not finished by any means, and I can notice a big glaring issue straight away, and that is, if I bring that down just a tiny fraction, I don't want to do that to every. So obviously I've messed up with that calculation I did earlier on. Maybe it's a rounding error because I'm dealing with fractions of a point and stuff like that. I think the best thing. Oh, there's there's a script I downloaded that deals with things like that as well. So if I go into my master pages, which I haven't touched yet, it's always best to, if you're doing global changes like this, do them in here. And it's in my user folder. It's this. It's a baseline grid optimization thing, really. So I think if I click that, I don't know if that'll have done anything. Nah. Ah well. Right. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to do that. Right, so that's fine. That means, yeah, it's reflected in everything. Yeah, it's just you don't want an unused empty line at the bottom of every single thing, you know, because in that case you'd be better off changing your bottom margin. So with the text at this stage, I would maybe think now about doing something to the master page. That's what I want. I'll rotate the other copy. That's great. Back to the master. Right, so I'm going to insert a special character, and it's no. It's a marker, sorry, current page number. Now I don't want this to be, I'm going to do that again now. Yeah, I don't want that to have the paragraph style. You could set up a paragraph style for this, but it just seems a bit ridiculous. And I want what colour for that? I want it centred within its frame. Move that out of the way then. So maybe I want it round about there. so the document's going to be at most about 32 pages. So I know I need enough space for, you know, a couple of characters. That's more than enough. And I quite like the fact that lines up with the margin there. So what we'll do, grab this, make that blue as well, and what I'll maybe do is get the effects palette, change that to multiply, and drop its opacity down, just so it's the same accent colour as that I'm using. It's a bit wide for what I'm doing at the moment. Right. God. No, I didn't set up a bleed in this document. I should have, but I didn't. Best to set that up at the start, and for a facing pages document like this, you would have a bleed top, bottom and outside. You wouldn't have a bleed on the inside of each page because there's absolutely no need, and it can cause problems if you ever send it to print on demand and it's got an inside bleed. It can kind of mess up your pages. It can mess up especially the spine. You might end up with your front cover kind of offset by the bleed amount, so nothing will be centered on the front page. Just don't put it in the inside. That's good. No. Right. So if I should have a bleed here. If I did, it would be about between 3 and 5 millimeters. And what you would do is you would make sure that that extended out into the bleed line. Also, this would be scaled so that it ran to the bleed. But there's no point in doing that now. I can't be bothered. Just copy that over. I'll copy that over. Going to make things easier for myself. Yeah, so that's got my page number. And what I'd done in the original is I had set the word Dead Fellas in the same font I'd used for the title for the front page. I'd created outlines from that and then used the outlines to sort of cut out the word Dead Fellas from, can't remember where I had it, maybe here. And I think there's some wee sort of glyphs and stuff subtly, in there as well. But that's fine. I'm just going to pause this and have a wee break. Right. For the headings, new paragraph style, call this heading 1. Can be based on body if you want, but I'm just going to base it on no paragraph style. For simplicity, I'm just going to leave it as Minion Pro. Sometimes I like to choose something a bit different. You can maybe leave it as Minion Pro at the moment, make it bold, I'll go for 16 on 16. I use optical kerning for larger type, especially for things like headings or, you know, titles and stuff like that. It can look a bit better. We want this just left justified. We don't want an indent. And for heading 1, I think we want all caps. So that's standard all caps, full size capital letters. And we want a colour. Now I'm just using, these are kind of defaults for InDesign. It could be nice to have your own custom swatch, you know, that's maybe like a nice burgundy or just whatever, but I'll use that for the moment. Now normally I wouldn't have this aligned to the baseline grid. I'll show you why. I need to turn off my preview. Nope, I need to go into my baseline grids. Grids. Make sure that's unchecked if you've got elements like this, because the grid's hiding behind them. This will show them in front. Now, despite that being 16 point and this baseline being 12 point, you can see that that fits nicely. It's almost the exact right size. If this was, say that was about to here, height wise, you know, if it was a much bigger word about that size, and it was aligned to the baseline grid, let's make it, oops, yeah, you can see that obviously leading does nothing when you're using a baseline grid, but you know, you can see as I change the size of that, the text below it isn't moving at all, and it won't move until I do that. So at 16 point, it allows that to drop into the next baseline grid increment. But if I went up even 0.1 of a point, it would push that all down a full 12 points. That's just the way baseline grids work. But we're not using the baseline grid for the headings. It's a bad idea. It's not needed. Makes no sense. You know, it doesn't have to line up or anything. So I could apply that to that. Now this is an issue we'll resolve later. Same here. I think these are actually going to be, they shouldn't all be heading 1. I think the introduction is the main heading, and within introduction 1 you have content warnings, which would be like heading 2. So I might as well do that now. Heading 2. So this will be the hierarchy below heading 1. Based on heading 1, let's just make it a bit smaller, and bold italic, no. Back to bold. So say, just for example, say that was our heading 2. Now you can see the spacing's getting all funky now. Yes, so that's heading 2. So the next thing we do is we resolve these spacing issues. Now I'm just going to take that out now. I know that this section's to be boxed. I'm going to deal with that next. But I'll take that out because it's messing us about with the spacing. Right, so this is less than ideal. You want the headings. You obviously want a bit of space between this, this and this. So you can see that in effect we've got 2 full lines of baseline grid, which is 24 points because the baseline grid's set to 12 point. So, and I'll do it in heading 1 and it should trickle down to heading 2. So I'm going to click out of that so that I'm not changing anything. Go to spacing. Now this can get really, kind of annoying if I'm honest. So I've got 16 points of spacing, of leading, sorry, built in, which remember it's kind of ignoring. So if you take 24 points here, hang on. Right, so height. So if you imagine that's 16 points. So if we take the 16 and subtract that from the 24, so we've got 8 points to play with. So if I stick in 4 points before, basically you want whatever you've got to play with, which in this case is two units worth of baseline grid, 24 points. So the space before, the space after, and the built-in leading of what you're working with should add up to the 24. So I could stick in 4 before, 4 after, which gives you that. But that's not what we want. That's a bit much. If you add to that, you should remove it from that. Let's take a look at how that's. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's roughly what I would want. Yeah, that's a reasonable amount of space between the heading and its kind of child paragraph, and it's a different and bigger amount of spacing there. That's fine. That looks okay. Affinity Publisher has the exact same type of setup, but for some reason it handles this aspect of it slightly differently. I can show you that in a minute if I've not droned on too long. Boxed text. Let's address boxed text. I would start with the body of the boxed text, and I would create a new paragraph style. Call it boxed body, and I would just OK that. Now it's done that, which is weird. Why has it done that? Doesn't matter, just get rid of that. Right, so that's applied to that now, and I've OK'd out it. So what I would do is make changes, then ask it to update that. So what we want is it's actually easier doing it. This is one of the few cases where it's easier doing it in the dialogue here, because doing it in the dialogue lets you not have that selected. It's already assigned that to that. So if I change this, that will change without me having to have it highlighted, the text actually selected. It means you can work over here and you'll see your results, see the results happening over there. So what you want is paragraph shading. You want to turn that on. You want to pick a colour. You might want to have it full opacity, in which case character colour would have to go to white. That's fine. If you're reversing out stuff like this, it can sometimes be a good idea to change the typeface to maybe a sans serif font, or at the very least it might have to be bigger with a bit more spacing, and maybe even a tiny bit bolder. Not bold, but you know, semi-bold or something, just to help it read, because small serif type reversed out can be hard to read, especially in print. But anyway, we'll do that later. Now within the paragraph shading, you can use offsets. So if I was to offset this, you can see it offsetting, but you don't want that. We want it within the left-right bounds of the text frame it lives within. But we do want the type inset, so that's a spacing issue. So we want a left indent of 6. 6 looks okay. So we want a right indent of 6. That's fine. Top and bottom we do handle using the paragraph shading. So we need to make sure that's unchecked, unclicked, unlinked. And we'll add four. Looks okay for top and bottom, I think. And maybe we want rounded corners, so I've set that to 6 point. That looks okay. What else? Now we're going to have to create a box header. I'll do that next. But what I'll do first is turn on a border. This doesn't matter, but I'm just going to do it top and bottom the same. Don't need to do this, because what I'm going to do right now is change the colour of the border, because you can see the border overlaid on top of the shading. I'm just going to change it to none, so it's an invisible border. The only reason for turning the border on is to get access to this checkbox, because if that's off, that's greyed out. This should also really be in paragraph shading. It's annoying that it isn't. It's a bug as far as I'm concerned. So you've got merge consecutive borders and shading with same settings, which means if I create a boxed heading paragraph style based on this, it will have the exact same settings built in, which means it will join the shading, without a line in between or a break. It's annoying that you have to do this this nonsense just to get that to work, but that's where we are. So I can assign that, and I can create my new paragraph style box header based on box body, Minion Pro, I get 14 point on 14 point optical. Let's make it bold. Let's make this caps as well. Why not? Right, so you can see that it's not created two separate paragraphs worth of shading, it's joined them, which is what we were after. Now, with boxes like this, you do not need these to line up with the baseline grid. It's not doing anything really, because visually it's so distinct in its box anyway that you're not getting the benefits. Let's just say none. So it's not aligned at all. Oops. And I might consider changing the font while I'm at it. Myriad Pro. Yeah. Myriad works quite well as a sans serif type along the minion. Now you notice that changed back. That's not great. That means that Myriad does not have open type all small caps. So what I might do, I'll OK that now, but what I'm going to do is have a wee look. I've got some favourited. Now if I scroll through these, you can see ones where it doesn't and ones that it does, just because it will update as I do this. So I might just look for one that's a sans serif that does. An alternative might be one of these kind of slab serif. actually quite like that one. Let's go with that. So that's Roboto Slab. Update. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll update that. No, that doesn't have. I thought. Right, I didn't change it, did I? So it's that being just a wee bit weightier, and with it being a slab rather than a normal serif, it's a bit more readable reversed out like that. But with it not being on the baseline, I would tend to give it just a bit more leaden as well, maybe. And right, that's what I need to do. I don't know why redefined style wasn't shown up there. Yeah, it doesn't need it quite as much at the top. Now what it does need is space before. So I can do that. Box header, I want space before it. Box body, I want maybe a wee bit of space after it. Yep. Now sometimes with reversed out boxes like that, you might want to also change the justification. You know, that could work. That could work just left justified. It's up to you. Might also be worth considering for the reversed out boxes only, maybe turning off hyphenation. It's not going to give you as neat a justification, but Oh, that's another thing. For all your type, um, make sure you actually set the right language. That sounds obvious, but it doesn't affect just spelling. Where words are hyphenated changes between US and UK English for some weird reason. You know, so it's just some words are by convention hyphenated differently. It's a tiny detail, but I can't see anything changing, but we'll fix that anyway. Now, other paragraphs, other character styles that will have to be considered. I'm just looking for an example. We're obviously going to handle this stuff. Is going to be set up as a sort of bulleted list because you're talking about each of the main scenes. So what I'm actually doing is looking down the right hand of each text frame, and I'm looking for anything awkward that jumps out at me, and I'm mainly looking for things like, say, the character names, Tukey, Mikey. Now Mikey, that's another thing I should change while I remember. Christian had spelled it Mikie, and I thought that just looked awkward. It didn't. I'd never seen Mikey spelled like that, so after some discussion with him, we decided to change it to Mickey, I think. No, Mickey, Mikey. I'll change it all, 20 of them. Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm looking down, I'm looking for names that are that are hyphenated. You know, so if that was hyphenated, I wouldn't be happy with that. But I don't actually see any. There's another thing. Foreign words, it's usually a convention to italicise them. Now the word caliphate isn't a foreign word, but the word Umayyad is. I wouldn't apply that to foreign names of people. Only kind of words in another language. So, I mean, within this glossary of mob terms, which is going to be reversed out later using a slight modification of the style, I would italicise the word capo because it's Italian. It's an Italian word for captain. We added in some additional terms. I don't know why he's screaming. We added in some additional terms that aren't in this, like omerta, which is an Italian word, so that would get italicised. Cosa nostra, italicised. It's an Italian phrase. There was another couple. But I don't see anywhere I can show you that at the moment. I'm looking for, as I say, awkward. effectively, it's a good idea to set up this character style anyway, so I'll just do it. Make sure I've got nothing selected. New paragraph style. Sorry, new character style we want. And it's just called no break. And the only thing in it that you do is you check no break. So if you had a character's name hyphenating, say that was a character's name, you would just select it like that and apply no break to it, and it wouldn't hyphenate it in that one instance only. You can also use it if there is just awkward hyphenation anywhere, but I'll just turn it back off because that's fine. And again, that's just something you would apply selectively as you worked your way through the type. I'm wondering if these should, yeah, I like that. I think I also prefer the old small caps applied to these things. There's quite a few of them, so I would maybe, I don't know, why is that? Right, I know what's happened. When I did a search and replace, when I did my last search and replace, I still had this down the bottom. So I want to search for my new spelling of Mikey, and I want to apply the character style and into it. Right, that's fine. I didn't want them all italicised. Now there's a case where that should be in caps, so is there another one? It would be worth doing a search for SAN just to see if there's other ones that would slip by. Now the reason for using all small caps in the first place for things like this is it looks nicer within blocks of text. It doesn't stick out as much as, you know, a series of capital letters, you know, that change the whole shape. It fits in nicely with when you're reading upper and lowercase together. Another sort of personal style thing that you can think about is how numerals look. I'm going to leave these as they are, but it's sometimes nice to use old style numerals, which look nice along with, you know, upper and lowercase screeds of text. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I need to show at the moment? that's another thing to watch out for if you're doing layout or editing for someone, you know, I'm obviously Scottish, I'm from Britain, UK English and all that. The convention in Britain tends to be that punctuation would be placed after the close quotes at the end of this sentence. American convention seems to be to include the punctuation within the quotes. Another thing to watch out for is that InDesign is using proper typographers' quotes rather than straight inch marks, they're called. And it can be a good idea to have a look at the Chaosium guidelines or style guide for, you know, obviously this isn't an official thing, but they do have guidelines that you can look at, and I think they're intended for people that are submitting work to Chaosium, but there's certain conventions that they use. So I think italicising Call of Cthulhu is one of the sort of conventions. The other one is that Keeper is capitalised, but Investigator or Investigators isn't. And I can't think of any of the other ones at the moment. So there, that should be capitalised. What I would do just for a style thing is maybe italicise these, just double check there's no space there. I've got a bad habit of turning on the preview and then forgetting to turn off again. It's good to work with seeing all these hidden characters. It can flag up things. You know, you can more easily see, you know, a space in there that we don't need, and there's a space in there that we don't need. Now, if there was a lot of them, if I thought there was a lot of them, I would do a search and replace for bracket space and replace it just with bracket, and then I would search for space close bracket and replace it just with close bracket. For things like this, it obviously doesn't recognise that word as a word. Might be able to, you can leave it if you're happy with that as a word, leave it. If not, pop in a wee hyphen. Still not happy with it, but you might think it looks better. Not sure if mythos should be capitalised. I'm just going to leave that there. And it's worth, if you are editing or doing layout for something, also checking things like names. I think in some cases in this document, this is spelt with an H there, Alejandro. So just check the consistency. Yeah, see there, it's spelt differently. So you'd obviously pick one or the other. You'd check with the author. Now from a style point of view, I prefer a colon for these date things. I also prefer for that. It's just a bit consistency as well. I'm just trying to think if, I mean, there's obviously things like pictures we haven't even covered. There's nothing much to them really. Now I would normally start this way. Then what I would do is insert X number of pages before page 1, and they would serve as my front cover, any page with any sort of credits, or you know, if you've got to give attribution to most of the pictures we used in the final thing were from Wikipedia Commons, so they were covered by the Creative Commons license, but it can be a good idea to mention that, and some of them might require, you know, explicit attribution. So, you know, I would insert X number of pages before this page for front cover, credits, the actual credits of the scenario, you know, the author, the layout person, if somebody that's done maps, pictures, and also obviously the Miskatonic logo and the kind of boilerplate text that credits Chaosium for their stuff. And then maybe you would also want a page for a table of contents. And that's also why I prefer to work this way, in one big long flowing bit of text, because I can easily add things in and everything will just bump along. You know, if I'd done this as a separate text box, it's a way a lot of people used to handle things like that. They would draw out a text box at the side, or they would draw out a box, make it blue, then draw a smaller text frame within it, make the stuff white and everything, and then they would place it in here as an inline object, so it's like a kind of nested object lurking in between that carriage return and the start of that paragraph. But I prefer this way. It's a lot better. And so where's the mob terms? Right. Glossary of mob terms. That's another advantage of staying off the baseline grid for special stuff like this. It's allowed me to have inter-paragraph spacing. If that was still on the baseline grid, that just wouldn't work. Because with baseline grid on, your choice for space is one full baseline grid, which is probably too much. You know, that amount of space between paragraphs is maybe too much for this type of thing. We need a new character style for this, and it's just called bold. And it is just bold. Now, I wonder if that's got... right, so I'm going to create another one. I want one that's black, which is heavier than bold. That's better, I like that. I feel these should start with a capital. Oh. Yep. I think that should be an M dash. In the final document, I handled these differently. I had them, you know, kind of a single line reversed out, blue with white type. And the way you do that, you don't use paragraph shading like you do with these. The way you do it for a single line like that is you use a paragraph rule, either above or below. Below is easier just conceptually. So if you imagine a rule below that, a line below that, you tell it you want it to be the full width rather than just underlining the characters. So you tell it you want it the full width. You make it blue or whatever accent colour you're using. You make it whatever size that type is. You make it, you know, 2 to 6 points, say, bigger than that. Because what you want is a couple of points at the top and a couple of points at the bottom. And then you offset it by X amount so that it's centred and it's got maybe 2 points above, 2 points below. And then you would use a slight indent on the actual paragraph style to make sure it wasn't starting like that. You know, it was in a wee bit. But I'm not going to bother with that now. If you find yourself applying the same style, you know, as you work through a document like that, what you can do, it's not worth doing for them, but it might be for things like this, body first. What you can do is, if you double click on it, shortcut, you can set up a shortcut on your keyboard. And when I used to work in newspapers, it was quite common just to do that on the fly, because you would make up these styles on the fly just for a specific advert. and it was quite common maybe to use like control and one of the numpad keys, so control numpad 1, control numpad 2, because it's not used for anything else by default. So say I do that, control numpad 1, so that means I can just find other places and just do that. It's a lot quicker. I'll cover pictures very quickly. Turn off my preview again with W. Control D. So who have we got first? Salvatore. Right, it's a bit big. So what I would do is bring it in full size like that. I'm holding down Control Shift and dragging to resize it. Now, wait a minute, how wide? So, if I type in divided by 2, you know, I maybe want to have something like that as a guide. If I want it exactly half a column worth, I can use that. What you would do for the likes of this is you would go text wrap, turn on text wrap, now I want that lined up with the cap height, so maybe bring it down just a tiny wee bit. Right. Now there's no offset at all at the moment. If I was to apply at the bottom, see it growing down there? As soon as it gets to there, it's bumping everything down. It's the baseline grid effect again. So I don't really want to add anything to the bottom, because I'm happy with that space. And as soon as it, you know, if I did add it, as soon as it gets, I mean, I could add, just for peace of mind, I could add 3 points. But what I would want is, on this side only, I would want a sort of visual equivalent, not necessarily an exact equivalent, but a visual equivalent. And this is sometimes where turning on your preview might give you a better idea. I wonder if that's too much. Yeah, that looks about right. There's a few things I'm not overjoyed by this, you know, having a single line. So I mean, it might make sense to was going to say it might make sense to make it bigger or smaller, but you would make that decision with one image. You can copy it, Dominic, and you can set up a object style for these. So because it's got certain things assigned to it now, like text wrap settings, because it's got that, you can set up an object style and you could apply that to any object and it will give you that consistency. You know, and you might want an actual rule round that, you know, a blue thin like 1 or half point rule, but I'm just going to leave that. What you can do once you place things like that, what I would do is, see with that wee blue box up there, if you hold down shift and you drag that wee blue box, I would drag that to there, the start of the A, and then I would be annoyed. And I would wonder what's happened. Anchored object options. Yeah, so our anchor points there. Yeah, you need to tell it where it is. So we're saying that point of the reference point is to be anchored on there, and we're anchoring it on text frame, but we need an offset. That's annoying. That's probably why I didn't anchor my stuff before. So anchored objects has an impact on text wrap for some reason. Oh well, just ignore that. Again, you can just copy. It's the same with bigger. Same with bigger images. I can't remember where this went in the original, but again, just turn on your text wrap. If you're using it in a full column like that, you know, you don't need to bother with giving it an offset or a wrap amount. Better to have done things like this before things like this, because you can see that it's messed up these. If you are grabbing these, just watch that you don't click in the middle. If you click in the middle, you're moving the content. It's really annoying. Grab it from round about here. Just don't grab it where the wee hand appears. If you've messed things up, or if you're farting about with stuff, just be aware. If I was to move, because this is Mikey, if I was to move Mikey over to where Mikey is, you know, it's going to cause me all sorts of grief, because Mikey's down there now. No, move this guy first. Work front to back with text wrap type stuff. Yeah, see, I'm not happy with that. There's different ways. There's different ways you can get around things like that. I'm just going to check my preferences a second. Is it under composition? No. See if I change that kerning tracking to 1/1000th of an M. If I highlight all of that now, I hold down Alt and my left arrow key. If you look up here, it's changing the tracking by 1 unit at a time. So changing it just by it's like -9/1000th of an M. So that's an override on that style now, but it's just tightened that up just a tiny wee bit just to eliminate that problem there of that couple of stray words on their own. That kind of editing is something I would do at the end. That would be the final pass, would be tweaking that sort of stuff. So if you work big to small, you know, big changes like overall styles of things, and you work smaller and smaller until maybe eventually you're adding in hyphenation somewhere, or taking it out with no break. But you can see with those hyphenation settings that I've set up at the very start, there's very few words are actually hyphenated. There's 1, 2, 3. So there's only 3 in that full text measure there, which is better than the defaults. And it's a nice clean look. Right, I think that's going to do for this ramble. As I say, I might do a similar one for Affinity Publisher. See how it goes. Thanks.